Critics blasted Indiana Governor Mike Pence for signing a religious freedom bill that they claimed would allow discrimination. Well, then once he signed a so-called fix to the bill, religious freedom advocates accused him of essentially gutting what the original bill was designed to do. Where's the truth in all of this? Let's bring in Ian Millhiser with the Center for American Progress and Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council. Thank you both for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, one of the problems that Indiana had is they don't have a state law on the books that specifically prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. And now they've tried to work that into the bill. Ian, does that fix it for you?
For me, no. So what the fix did not do is it did not provide statewide protections on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. What it did was it said that in municipalities, so in Indianapolis, for example, there's a local city ordinance that protects against certain kinds of discrimination, and that ordinance will now be honored. Religious objections will not be allowed to trump that ordinance. But in most of the state of Indiana, there's no civil rights protections for gay people or trans people, and that remains the same even after this fix.
Okay, and Tony, a number of the lawmakers who were working on the fix said that they may eventually do that. I think their legislative session is close to wrapping up, but they said eventually that they hope they're going to get something on the books like that. But listen, a lot of people on the right were unhappy with this fix and felt like it took the teeth out of the original intentions of the law. What say you?
Well, let's see what RFRA is about. It goes back to 1993 when Bill Clinton signed the first one. 19 other states put these laws in the books. And let's be very clear what they're about. These are not about infringing upon the rights of anyone. These are simply about keeping government from being used as a weapon to force people to violate their beliefs on a wide range of issues, whether it be life issues, whether it be religious dress, whether it be the issue of marriage. And I think we see today where this is going, over this huge firestorm in Indiana, and then today in the New York Times, where the New York Times has come out and said that those who hold to Orthodox Christian views on sexuality must be forced to change their views. That's what this is about. This is about attacking the beliefs of Christians in the beliefs that are taught in the Bible. And that's why people in Indiana are upset, because people in Indiana, Christians, families, people of faith in Indiana, were actually better off before this RFRA was passed.
Okay, so you mentioned the original national legislation that came up in 1993. The Supreme Court ultimately held that that didn't apply to the states, so many of them have passed something similar. But many of those laws came into being, and certainly the national law, when there wasn't this conversation about same-sex marriage. So it was a different conversation for a lot of people, and it wasn't viewed as simply just about this issue, Ian. But now it is viewed that way. Is there any way to make sure that people separate the two and know that this is about the original case, obviously, about somebody who was ingesting peyote and how it impacted his employment? This isn't just, and there's nothing in the legislation about same-sex marriage or anything else. It's about religious liberties as viewed by the individual, whether it is an issue of same-sex marriage or consumption of peyote or anything else that they have as a genuinely held religious belief.
Right. So the question of whether these laws should apply to gay people, whether religious objections can trump gay civil rights or trans civil rights, that's a fairly new question. The question of whether a religious objection can trump an anti-discrimination law generally, that's been around for a while. In the 1960s, when the Civil Rights Act passed, there was a business called Piggy Park that wanted to still engage in discrimination. They said they had a religious justification. The Supreme Court. In the 1980s, there was a school out in California that wanted to give lesser benefits to married women than they gave to all their other workers, and the court said no. So throughout history, in the 1993 law that Tony cites, I will note that that law incorporates all of these older court precedents. So the notion that religion or religious objections can trump anti-discrimination law, that battle's come up time and time again as we get new civil rights laws. And throughout history, the answer has been no, they cannot. You cannot use a religious objection in order to justify discrimination.
And to be clear,
and
Tony, let me lay this out really quickly and have a quick response from you. But people who backed this law in Indiana and other similar ones, and there are others coming in other states, say it's not that no business could have somebody walk in and say that they are a member of the LGBT community and say, I won't serve you food. It's when you cross the line to saying, I want you to provide
Correct.
services that in some way endorse my same-sex union, that's when the law's protections would kick in. And it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. They still have to go to court and potentially defend themselves, and people do lose those cases.
Shannon, that's exactly right. That's the point I want to make. This is a very narrow area, and it's a defense. It's a shield. It's not a sword. This would simply allow not broad-based discrimination, as people are saying, that you could refuse to serve someone. We're talking about family florists, family bakers being forced, all right, to violate their beliefs at the threat of losing their homes, like Baronella Stutzman in Washington State, losing her business and her home because she served gay men that came in, a gay man, but when he decided he was going to get married, she said, I just can't be a part of that because it violates my faith. In a civil society, we give people room. But what we're seeing here is that there is no civility and that they want to force people to be engaged that violates their faith. And I'll have to tell you, Shannon, as you just had the piece on about Mama Maggie, I've met her, I've sat down and talked with her, and the reality is, as we allow this religious intolerance to spread here at home, persecution will spread abroad. And that's why here in America, Christians, especially on this day that we celebrate the resurrection, we have to stand and defend this faith, because Christians will suffer abroad if we don't.
We've got to leave it there, but I thank you both for having a very civilized discussion. Obviously, two sides are going to see this very differently. We'll see if there can be some common ground as similar laws continue to be enacted across the country. Ian and Tony, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Happy Resurrection Day.
And to you as well. We'll be right back after this quick break.